Hi, this is Bruce Buffer, your voice of the Octagon, and you're listening to MMA Mental.
Okay, I'm now joined by the Ultimate Fighter 17 contestant Luke Barnett. First of all, Luke, thank you for joining us today.
It's no problem, mate. Nice to be here.
Cool. Okay. Well, we were just having a little bit of a chat off air, and obviously I wanted to stop because I wanted to get it recorded. We were just saying how manic things have been for you for the last few months. So, how are you feeling? Have you taken it all in?
Slowly taking it in. I mean, I've been on a bit of a dreamland since the UFC 3 weeks ago, and I literally haven't put a drink down and I haven't put a piece of pizza down in about 3 weeks. So I'm just adjusting to real life now. Come home, I got back to the UK I got back on Thursday. But I got back Thursday, drove all the way up to Peterborough from Heathrow, and I'm helping my friend Fabio cut weight because he fought on Saturday. So I went straight into coaching, and I cornered 6 guys on Saturday night at a local show in Cambridgeshire, and then that all happened. Then we drove back home, and then I woke up I've just been non-stop even since I got home. So, it's been pretty tough.
Before we talk a little bit about the house, what's the reaction been like from the fans?
I mean, positive. I haven't had any negativity from anyone, really. I mean, there was a few guys on Twitter or whatever, but from the fans, they seem to love it. And being the only UK guy on the show, even the Americans, when I was over in the States, they were like, you're one of our favourite guys on the show, blah, 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 so it's been a great reaction. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, my cousin actually met you at Wembley, and he got a picture with you, and he was over the moon, which was quite funny, because we'd already interacted before then about, obviously, I'd said to you about coming on the show after the season is finished. It's always hard doing an interview during the season, because obviously you're limited on what you can say, where if we get it after the season, we can really kind of go into detail, and you haven't got to worry about tripping yourself up, so that's why I thought it'd be better to do it now.
Yeah, so it's a lot easier now. It's all over, and you can reflect on it, and I don't have to, think too much about what I'm saying, because before it was very difficult.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the show then. Obviously, your first thing you had to do, of course, was, and it's become common practice now, is you had to fight your way into the house. Your opponent, I've just got to get the name here, was Nicholas Corring. Did you know much about your opponent?
When I fought Nick, I didn't know anything about him. Literally didn't know at all, apart from that he trained with the Diaz brothers, because what happens is at the tryouts, so when we try out to get on the show, I flew out to Vegas for the tryouts, and I got through the first stage, but we have to stay in a hotel for a week, and all the fighters are staying in the same hotel, and every day we have different things to do, like medicals, interviews, and all these sort of things, and you get put in groups, and Nicholas Coring was in my group, so every time we went out for a medical or something, we'd chat, and he was a really talkative guy, so I just remember that he was from the same place as the Diaz brothers, and he used to train with them. That's all I really knew about him going into the fight, because then when we get back and we make weight, and you don't know who you're fighting until 24 hours before the fight, and you're locked in a hotel room, so you can't do any research, because they take your mobile phone off you, they take everything off you, and they gave me Nicholas, and I didn't have a clue, which was, in a way, looking back at it now, I kind of liked it. It's not really a problem for me, because you get to concentrate on yourself and not worry about someone else. But, it's easy to say that when you win the fight. If I'd have lost, I probably would have said the other thing.
Yeah, that is a very unusual situation, because obviously, of course, now with modern MMA, it's all about game planning for your opponent, blah, blah, blah. And obviously, none of that was even possible, was it? It was just literally get in there, fight, and win.
Yeah, you literally, there's no game plan. You just go in there and like I said, go in there and fight. Which, to be honest, is how I fight. I don't really have. I don't believe in game plans. If I'm fighting a Abu Dhabi world champion, I'm not going to take him down. But it's one of those things. I don't go into a fight thinking I'm going to do a specific thing, because I feel like that's that can be detrimental to any fighter at the moment. A lot of people are sticking to these game plans and thinking, I've got to do this or I've got to do that, and if that fails, they sort of have nothing else to go to. They sort of lose faith in themselves, and they start to crumble. So I just go in there and fight, and I have a set idea of what I want to do, and then if that doesn't work, I'll do something else. So it kind of worked in my favour a little bit. And plus, I'm a 6'6" middleweight, which is very rare. And if Nicholas, it was probably a bit harder, because
Yeah, I mean, obviously being that height for that weight class is such a big advantage. And also as well, if you looked at your record, you've proven to be well-rounded because you've got just as many wins by TKO as you have by submission. So obviously after the first round of fights, you were actually the number one pick. How nice was that? Was you surprised at that?
I was extremely surprised. Like, when it happened, I sort of went with it or whatever. But looking back, to get picked by an American, like by Chael, who's an American, I was the only English there. He's a wrestling guy. He picked a tall, lanky striker. It was very odd. But now I've known the guy a long time. I've trained with him a long time. It's kind of weird. We have the same sort of ethics when it comes to training and fighting. I like to push the pace. I like to keep the pace high, and I like to just keep going constantly. And that's definitely what Chael does. And I did that in that fight. So looking back at it, when he picked me, all he saw in me was the fact that I was constantly putting pressure on my opponent, which is what his style he likes to do. So it kind of makes more sense looking back at the time. I was absolutely shocked.
Obviously, Chael Sonnen is a huge name in MMA and a huge character. What was he like as a person?
It's hard to not sound cheesy about it or whatever, but he's the nicest man I've ever met in my life, and he really is. He did so much for. I went out to train with him, so I think I was there for 9 weeks in total, and I took John Maguire with me, my teammate, and the amount he did for me and John, which we didn't know, he did so much for us. We just turned up. He gave us his truck for 3 months and said, here's my truck, so you can get around. You don't have to rent a car. Every now and then he'd pop by the house just to see how we were, and then he'd bring groceries or shopping around for us, food shopping around for us, to make sure our diet was on and all these sort of things that I just didn't expect. I expected hardly to see him, to be honest. I expected to see him every now and then, and he'd be a busy man. But he had all the time for us in the world, and he was a great guy. So, anyone who, because there's a lot of people think Chael's a bit of a dick, because of the way he's perceived in the media. I know the Armour Fighter sort of changed that, but there's still some people that want to see him get beat and all this stuff. But if you actually have a conversation with a guy and you sit down with him, you can realise he's a great guy.
To be fair, he come across brilliant on the show, and he come across so genuine, and with what you're saying, it just kind of adds to that. Now, obviously, there was a lot of hype around one particular fighter in the house, which of course was Uriah Hall, which was one of your teammates, and there was a lot of hype saying people didn't want to fight him. How much of that was hype and how much of that was real?
Well, I remember this quite vividly as well, especially with how it worked out with, obviously, Kelvin and Uriah fighting in the final. And I remember we came out of the house, we hadn't heard anything going on, and there was like a press conference or something, and Dana came out saying, everyone's afraid of Uriah Hall or something like that. And Kelvin texted me saying, I'm not afraid of that bum or something like that, he said. I can't remember. And I was like, yeah, neither am I. No, we're not afraid of the guy. The guy is talented, don't get me wrong. But I think during the show, the other team, like Bubba and a few other guys, they were intimidated by him. And I can understand that, because if you look at the way the guy fights and the finishes he got in those 2 or 3 fights that he had, that's the only time that, that the Team Jones got to see him. It's the only time they saw him. They saw him spinning kick Adam in the head, knock out Bubba in 8-9 seconds, or whatever it was, and break some guy's arm in the first fight. So they're going to be intimidated by the guy. I mean, it's natural. But if you're a fighter and you go there to fight and beat anyone, it doesn't matter. We got exposed to him in training, throughout the house, all that sort of stuff. And none of us on our team were scared of the guy. None of us really, rated him that high. We knew he was athletic and he could kick and all these things. But we all, going into the finale, we all knew Kelvin was going to win. And everyone, the hype behind it was like, Uriah's going to destroy him. If I was allowed to bet, which I'm not because I'm part of the UFC now, I would have bet my house on Kelvin beating Uriah. And unfortunately, I wasn't allowed.
That's crazy. So why were people so confident in Kelvin then? Because what did he show that made you think, obviously, that you were obviously right, that he could beat Uriah?
Well, Kelvin's Chael, I think, describes him the best. Kelvin is effective. He's not that good at anything. Like, you train with him, he's not an amazing jiu-jitsu guy. He's not an amazing wrestler, but he's effective. he will get submissions, he'll get takedowns, and he will grind you out. And he was an underdog. I think Kelvin, when you look at the fights in the house, I think Kelvin fought Bubba, he fought Josh, and he fought Colin. And if you speak to anyone who was on Team Jones, you know, Bubba, Josh, and Colin were some of their toughest grapplers, their toughest guys in general, you know. I mean, if you saw Josh's performance at the finale, he's a tough dude, you know, when he got out of that triangle with King and all that sort of stuff. So it's almost like Kelvin had the hardest route to the final, and Uriah almost had, you know, the way it transpired, had him a really easy route to the final. So it's hard. It's really hard for the guys watching the show and to see what's going on, because you guys get fed an hour a week, or whatever it is, an hour a week of something we saw for 24 hours a day, you know. So it is difficult. I'm not trying to take anything away from Uriah. The guy he's a phenomenal athlete, and he's got phenomenal talent. But Kelvin he's hard working. That's the difference. The guy, you know, he's typical young kid, doesn't care about anything, just likes to train and works hard. You know, he's brilliant.
Yeah, he was very likeable, and he seemed to be, every time he fought, he seemed to be the underdog. Now, obviously, once you'd got into the house, you were picked to fight straight away, and you were picked to fight a guy who was literally 8 or 9 inches shorter than you. Was you surprised at the matchup?
I wasn't surprised to get him picked first. For some reason, they didn't show any of it on the show, but I actually said I reckon I'm going to get picked first, for a few reasons. I was the most injured after my fight to get in the house, because I fractured my elbow, so I was in pain, and I was 23 pounds overweight, you know, within 24 hours, because I'm a big dude. I'm a very, very big middleweight, you know. So their team knew I was heavy. They knew it. They didn't, you know, it wasn't like a secret. It's not like I kept it quiet. So I thought they were like, I'm one of the biggest, I'm the number one pick, and I'm a bit injured, so let's take him out while we can. Now, then getting Gilbert, I was at the time I was like, you know, whatever, but I can see the thought pattern from John Jones. He's thinking, he'll be able to take me down because I'm from England, so I can't wrestle, and he's better on the ground than me, so he'll beat me on the ground. This is what they were thinking, you know, this is what they had in their head. And if you actually watch, because obviously I've studied the season 100 times, if you watch the first ever episode of We'll Fight to Get in the House, when Gilbert wins, you see John Jones come on screen and say, you know, I think Gilbert's very talented. He would be a great guy to put in against a good striker with bad takedown defense. So they assumed I was a good striker with bad takedown defense. When, like you just said, you know, if you look at my record, I actually have a lot of wins by submission, and I actually take a lot of people down to get on top and to submit people. So, you know, I think it was just a few presumptions. Being English, that's the matchup they decided. But, you know, looking back at it, it was a bad decision. But if I'd lost it, you know, it could have been completely different. How
nice was it to land that flying knee?
Well, I've been practicing that knee for probably a year and a half. You know, I remember, I don't know if you followed or saw the fight, but when I fought Ben Callan, which was February last year or whenever it was, that was like my biggest fight to date, really. And I drilled that flying knee for that fight for weeks, and I actually pulled it off a couple of times in the fight, but I didn't knock him out. I just dropped him and did a few things, and to pull it off second round when it was a very close fight, tough fight, I was getting tired. You know, it was unbelievable. First time I've ever knocked anyone out in a fight, so you know, it meant a lot to me, and to get through to the next stage, it was great. It was brilliant.
Did you know any of the guys by reputation before you went into the house, of the 14 that made it?
I knew Tor Prang, or however you say his name, the Hammer.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's huge on the European team. Anyone who knows about MMA knows Thor, like, in my opinion. He's ranked number 1 in Europe at middleweight, I think. Obviously, outside the UFC. He was brilliant, and I knew of him before. I knew of Zach Cummings before, because my teammate John had met him and told me about him and all that sort of stuff. But everyone else, I didn't have a clue. I didn't know anyone. So I got to meet a lot of new people and train with lots of very talented guys, and you know, and got to improve my game a lot. So it was great. I'd never met anyone. I'd never actually physically met any of them before, out of the 14. Even through, like I said, the process of doing doing your medicals, and somehow I managed to miss everyone. The people that got in I'd never met before, so I was a complete stranger to everyone.
So moving on to your next fight, obviously you faced Dylan Andrews, and we talked there about the ground game. And it was interesting to note that in the second round of that fight, you actually won that round off your back because of how active you are with striking. And there was actually a clip where Dana White said to somebody, I can't remember who he was speaking to, that he's so pleased the judges gave you that round because you were by far the more active. What were your thoughts on the match with Dylan Andrews? I mean, it was an absolute war. It won you the fight of the season, if I remember correctly, as well.
Yeah, I got fight of the season for the fight me and Dylan put on. It's a very frustrating fight, this fight for me. I feel like if you look at Dylan's record and all the rest of it, Dylan's a great fighter, there's no doubt about it. But I remember, and again, I didn't show it on the show, but I remember thinking, finally, after fighting Gilbert, so I fought Gilbert, I fought Nicholas Coring, before that I just fought a guy called Mathieu Perrin, before that I fought another guy called, and they always want to take me down. Everyone wants to take me down because I'm 6'6", they just want to take me down and hold me on the ground. And I saw Dylan's fight against Zach, and I saw his fight to get in the house, and he had some really crisp, beautiful striking. And I was thinking, finally, I get to fight someone who's going to stand in front of me, and we get to punch each other in the face. That's what I thought. And if I want to try and take it down, whatever. But I come out and we trained for it I had about 5 days to prepare for Dylan, I think. And we trained for a striking fight. We trained for fighting a southpaw, because he was southpaw against Zach, and a striker. Comes out, first round, comes out as an orthodox fighter and he takes me down. And I was so aggravated because not only he took me down, but he took me down with nothing special. I should have stopped the takedown, and it made it look like I couldn't even wrestle. But it was just in my head, I didn't think he was going to try, and I made that mistake, that mental mistake of switching off and all the rest of it. So it got to the ground, and when it got to the ground, I was really active, and the fight was brilliant, and all the rest of it. But I feel like if I fought Dylan again, and I went into the fight thinking, right, stop the takedowns and punish him, I would beat him. So there was a few points in that fight, some fight-changing moments, which if I'd have just done the right thing, I would have won. And it was frustrating. But at the same time, if I'd have won that fight, and I'd gone through to the semis or whatever it was, I probably would have ended up fighting Uriah. And like Dylan, the only reason Dylan lost to Uriah is because he was beat up. The guy had 2 to 3 round fights in 4 weeks, and the guy was beat up. And I had the same, and I was beat up. So Uriah had 3 fights, but finished them all when he was fresh and all the rest of it. And tonight I wouldn't want to fight. I couldn't imagine fighting after that fight that we had, like 5 days, 6 days later or whatever it was. We could hardly walk around the house without another fight. So, I think it all worked out for the best. I was a bit disappointed with the loss. It's the first time I've ever lost as a pro. Obviously it doesn't count, but it still counts in my head. So, it was tough.
It was mad though, because like you say, you lost the fight, but in a way you raised your reputation quite a lot in that fight because of what you showed off your back in that second round, and because it was such a good fight. And sometimes you're almost better, in the eyes of the UFC, and we've seen this especially with the last season of Ultimate Fighter, which was obviously, it didn't do very well. You're better off losing an exciting fight than winning a boring fight. And in fact, that's what happened with you in that fight, wasn't it?
Yeah, I will never have a boring fight. It will never happen. It's not within me. I don't go in. There's a phrase there's a few guys in the gym that I train, and that do have boring fights. And the way I look at it is, I said it on the series, and a few people took the mick out of me and said, "Oh, well, obviously, I fight to win." And I said that on the series, and people were like, "Well, obviously you fight to win." But what I meant is, I don't fight not to lose. A lot of people fight and they go out there and they're worried about losing, and they fight not to lose. I don't do that. I go out and I fight to win. So whatever position I'm in, I'm trying to win. If it's third round and I'm 2 rounds up, I'm trying to finish the fight and win. I'm not bothered about losing. And I think that mentality showed in that fight. Second round, I'm on my back and I'm not just holding on to him to try and get stood up. I'm trying to beat the hell out of him and get a submission, you know, to try and win the fight. I'm not never going to have a boring fight. It will never happen. And I think you're right. I think that's what the fans want to see. I think that's what UFC want to see. They want to see people fight. They don't want to see people strategically try and get a W, you know. People say the most important thing in fighting is winning, and I completely disagree. You know, it's an entertainment business. We're here to entertain the fans, put on great fights, and if you win, you win. You know, like, obviously I want to win, but I want to win impressively. I don't want to win by holding on to someone for 15 minutes and the fans hating me, you know.
Yeah, and I think that paid off, for not just for you, but for everyone on the season, because if you look at this season compared to the season previously, every person on this season was given the opportunity to fight in the finale. Of course, we had Zach pull out through injury, and like I said, I spoke to Zach recently, and he'll get another fight. Tor and Adam fought previous week in Sweden. But if you look at the season before that, other than the finalists, the only two guys got given a chance were the semi-finalists, and even one of them was cut after losing, just because it wasn't an exciting season. Where this was the absolute opposite. It was just every fight was just brilliant all the way through.
I mean, we had dinner with Dana after the show finished. So, like, the show finished, we all drove to the hotel. Dana met up with us and took us for dinner. And he told us there and then, he said, this has been the best season of the Armour Fire he thinks ever. That's how he put it. I think season 5 and season 1 were pretty hard to beat. But he said, best season ever. You know, you will all get a chance to fight in the UFC. You know, so people like Gilbert, who lost in the first fight, you know, he was depressed going through the whole season. He still put on a good fight, and he's still a very talented fighter. He's still got the opportunity to show himself in the UFC. You know, so there was a lot of relief that day, and a lot of people felt good about it, because I didn't know if I was going to get the fight. You know, even though I put on some great fights, and I won 2 out of 3. You know, and my third top fight, which I lost, was fight of the season. I still was like at dinner thinking, oh, shit, I've got to go back home. I've got to go back to, you know, Bama or something, and win another 10 fights before I even get a chance in the UFC. And you know, they gave us the opportunity. Dana put it out there, and it was Dana's decision. Dana stood up and said, right, you're all fighting, all of you. And he told Joe Silver about it, and Joe Silver was pissed. He didn't want to have 7 new middleweights. He wanted to have 1 or 2, but they lived up to it, and you know, we all got our opportunity to fight. And you know, I think it was the right decision in my opinion, because of the amount of talent that was on the show.
Yeah, I think it was as well, and I think it will go on to the next season, and people will look at that season and think, right, if we go in with a similar attitude, then obviously they'll hopefully get the same opportunities as well. So obviously in the finale, then you were matched up with Colin Hart, and Colin Hart obviously had the same run as you. He made it to the quarterfinals, and he obviously got knocked out quite quickly by Calvin Gastelum. What were your thoughts on facing Colin Hart in the finale?
I was worried about having a boring fight. That's all I could think about was Colin grabbing me and just pinning me up against the fence, laying on me like he did against King in his first fight. You know, that was all my thought pattern was. I didn't expect to get Colin. I thought Colin was the furthest from my mind about a fight. I actually, you know, thought I'd get Bubba or I'd get Clint Hastert. That's who because we were both number 1 pick, and I thought me and Clint would have ended up fighting, but you know, I got Colin, and I wasn't worried about fighting Colin at all. I was worried about having a boring fight, because he has that sort of style to really just grind people out and be boring. You know, as much as I didn't want to be, he could have nullified everything I did and just laid on me. Luckily, that didn't happen, and we had an absolute war. But you know, that was my first thought when I heard Colin's name.
Yeah, it was a good fight, and to be fair, to him, he came out looking for the knockout, just like you were looking for the knockout. I mean, literally, you stood and traded for 15 minutes, and of course, your striking, you know, was the difference. But it was an epic fight. To be fair, the finale was a really, really good card. There was loads of good fights on that card.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Colin, this is what I think. I think Colin wanted to take down. This is how I look, because I've watched the fight a lot. Colin didn't want to stand and fight. He didn't want to do that. But I think after he tried to take me down for quite a while, and it wouldn't. He got me down once, and I got straight back up, and then got him off. And he kept trying to get the takedown, and he couldn't get it. He just decided, forget it. I'm just going to hit him. And because he was getting quite, you know, I've had a lot of discussions about this. He was hitting me quite a bit, you know, but none of his shots he hit me with actually caused that much damage to me. although it might look like it, I'm 6'6", and like the way my coach puts it, I'm like a willow bending in the wind, like a tree.
Yeah.
If I get hit and I move, there's a lot of movement, so it looks like I'm in trouble a lot in the fight. But while I was in the fight, I was supremely confident. I felt like every time I hit him, it hurt, and every time he hit me, it didn't. So I was happy to stand and trade and get hit and hit him back. There was one or two shots, obviously, Conor got me with that hurt. Don't get me wrong. And he kicked me in the ribs once, which hurt. He bought it. He came to win. And I was amazed at the amount of punishment he could take, because I broke his nose in the first round, and I peppered him, for 15 minutes. So it was impressive by Conor. I was impressed by his will and the way he turned up and just stood in front of me and banged. And I thought he would get an opportunity in the UFC again, but I think because they took on so many middleweights, unfortunately he didn't. But that's how it works. The finale card was sensational. It was one of the best cards I've been to. I was just at the John Jones versus Chael Sonnen card, which is a much, much more highly paid card, much highly touted fighters. Some of the best in the world fought on that card. And I think the finale was 10 times as good. And I think you could feel that in all of the fights. And I think we were all there to put on a show, and we all did really, really well. So I was quite proud of being part of that card.
It was. I mean, I'm a fan. I watch everything the UFC puts on. I watch, and it was a fantastic card. And you're right, it was a lot better than UFC 159. UFC 159 wasn't bad. It was a good card. There's obviously a lot of strange things, but this card was definitely ended up being better. Right, I just want to ask you some of your views on different things and different people in the house. First thing I want to ask you is, obviously at the end of round one, once you're in the house, we get the wild cards. Now, when the wild cards were announced, it was between two people on each team. It was between Kevin Casey and Zach Cummings. It was between Bubba McDaniel and Clint Hester. Now, I remember thinking after watching what I'd seen on the show that the wild card slots should have gone to Clint Hester and Zach Cummings, and of course the coaches went the opposite way. What were your thoughts on the wild card slots?
Well, I've had a lot of discussions about this again. I personally think Clint should have got the wild card on Team Jones. It's incredibly difficult for John Jones to ever do that, because he trains with Bubba, and he still trains with him now. So if you don't give he's like a friend and a teammate, you don't give him that opportunity. And I know it's not the right thing and the right way to look at it, but it's reality, it's life, Imagine training with a guy 2 months later, and he didn't get the opportunity to show himself, and he didn't get a chance in the UFC, and he was back, it's a horrible place to be put in. I think talent-wise and fighter-wise and the rest of it, Clint 100% should have got the wild card. I'm immensely happy he didn't, because the guy is a much tougher fighter in my opinion than Bubba, and if he'd have got through, it could have changed the whole ethos of the whole thing. But I think Clint should have got it on the Jones side, but Bubba did. And on our side, I think it didn't matter. I think King deserved it as much as Zach deserved it. And I think if you were there in the training sessions and you witnessed what we witnessed from King, that man is incredibly talented. He's an incredibly good fighter. He just didn't bring it out in his fights. He let himself down. He let the team down. But talent-wise, the man is amazing. He is fantastic.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
I can't go against Chael for that decision. Zach's close to me, and I'm a good friend of Zach, and I felt bad for him at the time. But if King had got given a wild card and he'd have run through Bubba and then he'd won another fight, everyone would have been like, "Oh, it was a great decision to pick King." But because of what happened and he quit in between the rounds, everyone's saying Zach should have got a wild card. But I don't agree. I think just because of the way it happened, when you look back at it, you think anything could have happened with King. If he'd got picked, Zach might have got picked and got knocked out, and everyone would have been like, "Oh, he should have given it to King." It's one of those decisions that you're going to get. You're never going to get everyone agreeing with you. So it was a tough decision for the coaches.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. We all have different views and different reasons for our views, and that's what makes it so good. Right, I'll ask you your opinion on some of the characters that I couldn't tell whether there was animosity between you and them or not. Just wanted to get what your view was. What was your view on Uriah Hall?
Yeah, I'm definitely not a fan of Uriah Hall. He knows it. Everyone knows it. Me and Uriah didn't get on very well in the house. Outside the house, it's completely different. I mean, it's different world now compared to living with each other. You know, he's not someone I'd want to hang out with, and he's not someone I'd want to live with. Doesn't mean I've got like a huge animosity and I hate him or anything like that. But I'm not his biggest fan, and I'm not his biggest fan for a few reasons, which probably aren't his fault. You know, I hate hype. I cannot stand it. I hate people who get hyped up and don't live up to it, because they can't live up to it. The hype that was around Uriah Hall was like suicide. You know, he was never going to be the man that they said he was, and we all knew that. You know, so I felt bad for him in a way, but at the same time, some of the things he did while we were in the house were just ridiculous, and I think he approached the Ultimate Fighter in a bad way. You know, I think he was looking at it as he was trying to dominate the house. He was trying to play mind tricks on people. He was trying to, you know, in training, he was trying to prove to people that he was better than them, and you know, he was trying to win, which, fair enough, you know, you can do that. But you know, I've met a few people throughout my career. One of them was Randy Couture, and he spoke to me about a few things, and he was champion for a long time, and he said, you know, winning fights is important, and being a champ is important, but being a good person is much more important. You know, fans will love you if you're a good person and you put on good fights. If you're a little bit arrogant, or you have a bit of Uriah Hall in you, you might become Uriah Hall could definitely be a middleweight champ at the UFC one day. You know, doesn't mean he's going to be the most loved man in the world, and he might get very high, and then he'll be very low, and you know, he'll be surrounded by people that don't really care about him. You know, that's the way I look at it. I came away from the show thinking I would train with every single person on this show apart from Uriah Hall. So, you know, I would never want to help Uriah get better, put it that way. I'd want Kelvin to get better. I'd want Gilbert to get better. I'd want Josh to get better. You know, there's a lot of people I'd want to get better. So yeah, I definitely had a negative experience with Uriah, but you know, he's under a lot of pressure, and now we're out of the house, I think that can change. We'll see.
Were you pleased? Were you really, really pleased then that Calvin obviously won that fight?
Honestly, I was. Kelvin, I tweeted it, I think, at the time. Kelvin's my hero. Kelvin is the man. I'm so happy with Kelvin. He deserved it, because look at it this way: on the finale, everyone who won got a contract, and everyone who lost didn't, apart from Uriah Hall. Uriah still got a UFC contract. Now, if Uriah had beat Kelvin, would Kelvin still have got a UFC contract? That's the question. I don't know the answer. You know, would he still have got a second chance? Because the UFC love Uriah Hall, which is fair enough. I can see why. Kelvin put in the work, and he won the whole tournament. You know, and no one ever expected him. No one picked him from the whole of the 14 people from the beginning.
Yeah.
He came through and he beat everybody. You know, and he was like the little brother of the show. Even us, even his teammates didn't believe he was going to win the fight till he won. Some of them, you know. So yeah, I was proud of him. I was happy for him, and you know, I want him to be the best he can be. Me and Kelvin have now got the same manager. We're going to be. I want to train with Kelvin as much as I can. I think Kelvin's brilliant, and I think when he drops down a weight class, which he's going to do, you know, the guy can do really, really big things in the UFC. He's 21 years old. You know, give the guy 5-6 years, what we could be anywhere. You know, so I was extremely happy. You know, I almost cried when he won. I know it sounded, but I did. I was really happy for him.
Yeah, he come across great on the show, and he's such a likeable person. Especially the whole thing with his like a infatuation with Ronda Rousey as well. I mean, what guy doesn't have a crush on Ronda Rousey? But it was just he just come across as being such a nice guy. What was your view on Josh Salmon?
Me and Josh are good buddies. You know, I like Josh a lot. When he was in the house, he's one of those people. He's a little bit like me. You know, this might be a bit dodgy, what I'm about to say. You either like him or you hate him. You know, Josh, once you get over the fact that he's a little bit arrogant, because he is arrogant, he'll admit it to you. You know, he's a really cool guy. He said some brash things on the show, and you know, whatever. You know, he won his fight against King. I wanted King to win because he was my teammate, and I was a bit upset for King. But you know, Josh did the right thing, and then me and Josh partied in Vegas for the whole weekend. You know, he's a top bloke. He's a really nice guy, and on the show, I felt the same. We've got similar backgrounds. He runs a business. I used to run a business when I was younger, and you know, we had a lot in common. We're both very
I know what you mean. I wasn't keen on him at first, but he kind of grew on me. I think what didn't help was at the start of the season, he went in and he was dictating to the coaches, not just who he wanted to fight, who he wanted everyone else to fight. And I think that's probably what did come off well. But then when he got in the cage, to be fair, he did back up what he was saying. So if someone backs up, you don't tend to mind so much. What were your views on Bubba McDaniel?
I mean, Bubba's a bit of a head case, I think. I don't know, because I knew him. I messed him up, pied with him a little bit, and went out with him a little bit, before the show and stuff. And he's a nice guy. He was great and that, but I think he's got two sides to him, Bubba. He's a very emotional person, and he's a very cold person, and I think the house just broke him. I think he really could not handle the Ultimate Fighter, and he didn't do very well. But I mean, if I was a fan watching the show, and some of the things he said in the private interviews, were terrible. I'm not like a big fan of Bubba. He's a nice guy. If I see him, I say hello. And at the end of the day, he trains John Jones. That's enough said for me when it comes to Bubba. So he's all right. I've got no anger towards him. He's a nice guy. I've seen him at a couple of shows since. Sat with him, had a chat. I hope he's good. I hope his kids are good. He's a good person at heart. I just think he's got a lot going on, put it that way.
Yeah.
So I got on with him on the show, and I got on with everyone. Apart from Uriah, I pretty much got on with everyone, and I wish everyone the best. But I'm definitely not going to be looking out for him in the future and hoping he wins. And if he comes up against Kelvin, for instance, I'm rooting for Kelvin. So he's been around a long time, so he'll be fine.
Another thing I wanted to ask you was one of my friends runs a podcast in the US, and I believe you were on the show because I think he had everyone on from Team Sonnen. It's the Word on the Street, and he was doing it with Coach Jamie Huey. Was you on that show with Ramses?
Yeah, I did Word on the Street. Yeah, I did it once, and my teammate John McGuire did it once as well.
What were your thoughts on? Because I think Ramses is I do a show with him weekly as well. I think he's a great guy, but he's just so funny. What were your views on being on the show?
I had a great time on that show. I love to talk, and he asks a few more questionable things. He really he's a bit cheeky, which was good. And I think he has got a really good show. I've listened to it a lot since. I think he's had a lot of people on there from the show, and it was great fun. I really enjoyed doing it, especially with Jamie. I know Jamie pretty well now, and he did well on the show as well. So it was cool to be on there.
Yeah, he is. He's a bit like the Chael Sonnen of the podcast world. I always think he likes to be a little bit outspoken and controversial, but he's a huge Chael Sonnen fan. I know that much. So, okay, obviously, I said I'd have you on for 20 minutes. You did say it would be longer, and it's been awesome chatting with you. I want to ask you one last question before I let you go. Obviously, you won your fight at middleweight. You're now in the UFC. Have you got any eyes on who you'd like to face next?
I mean, I've already asked for a few people. I mean, the guy I want to fight is Francis Common. He's the goal at the moment. I've said it before, I think once or twice. I think in my last fight against Colin Hart, I think I landed 119 significant strikes. I think that was the number. I think in Francis Common's full career, he's probably only landed about 30. So in his last fight, he went a full 15 minutes, and I think he landed about 16 punches. The guy's on a 5-fight win streak in the UFC. I believe he lost his last 2 fights.
Yeah,
once against Tom Lawler and once against Larkin. I watched them both, and both of them I think he lost. I think he's just boring. His fights are boring. He's not exciting. The most exciting fight I've seen him in was him against Carlos Famola, where he managed to pull off a submission, which was pretty sweet. But he's now ranked 15th in the world or 15th in the UFC or whatever. I just don't think he deserves to be there. But I'm not deluded. I'm 6-0. I've just got into the UFC. They're not going to give me someone who's on a 5-0 win streak. I need to build up to it. And I'm hoping my goal now is hopefully to find the next UK card, which will be September, October time. And there's I want to fight another European. And there's Magnus Kallenblad is the guy who I've got my eyes on at the moment. He's Swedish. He's about 6'3", 6'4". He's had one fight in the UFC. He lost. He fought Francis Common in Sweden last year in April, and he's not fought since. And I think it's your responsibility if you're in the UFC to fight. That is what we're here to do. And he's walking around telling people he's in the UFC, and he's not even won a fight in the UFC, and he's been sitting there since last April, and he's not fought since. I don't know if he's injured, having personal problem, whatever it is. But, you know, in my opinion, he doesn't deserve to be in the UFC, and I want to fight him, beat him, and then he can get fired, you know, because we don't need middleweights like him in the UFC who are just taking up slots. You know, Thor, who I was in with the house with, he should have been in the UFC a long time ago. You know, the guy's 17 and 4 or whatever his record is, and Magnus Cannonball gets in the UFC a year before him and sits on the sidelines. It's not, you know, it's not good ethics, and it's not what the UFC wants, and it's not what I want for the sport. So, you know, the plan is take out Magnus Cannonball, hopefully. You know, we'll see whatever Joe Silva gives me, but that's who I want. Then I might have to have another fight against whoever, and then I want Francis to come on, in, you know, late next year or whenever I can get him. Hopefully his next fight pulls out and I drop in late notice, and then I take him out, and then I'm 15th in the world. That's the plan.
Are you gonna, obviously, if a short notice fight come up, then would you be ready to take it? Would you be looking to take it?
I train, you know, I train like a beast every week, every day. You know, I got back from the States on Thursday. I think I got back at 1 p.m. and I was training with Jack Mason down BKK at 6 p.m. You know, I just got off a 12-hour flight, but you know, it's what I do. It's what I do for a living. I'm a professional athlete. I train every day, so I'm going to look to fight on the next UK card, which is a bit of a way away. It's like 5 or 6 months. And then I'm going to say to Joe Silva, you want me to fight, you let me know. If someone pulls out, I will take it, because I'm always ready to fight. Although I'm a big dude, I'm a big middleweight, you know, I can cut weight, I can make weight. I cut 30 pounds in the show to make weight. I can do it again. So I'd love, you know, there's that whole, don't get ready, stay ready, or whatever they say, you know. But I'm always like that. You can build up a lot of ground in the UFC by taking late fights. You know, if I could fight someone like Chris Camozzi on late notice, he's ranked like 20th in the world. You know, I'd fight him tomorrow, and that means I'll be 20th in the world. You know, you can really boost your persona, get more fans. You know, it's what the game's all about, is fighting. So, you know, I'm always ready to fight, and the biggest problem with the UFC and fighting in the UFC is lack of fighting opportunities. You know, if I fight in September, October, I'll have 2 fights this whole year. That is not what I'm used to. I don't know if you followed my career when I was coming up as a semi-pro, or, you know, when I was in the UK scene. In the last 2.5, 3 years, I've had 17, 18 fights. You know, so I like to keep active. I like to fight a lot, and I'm going to try and do the same in the UFC.
That's brilliant. I'd like to see both those fights you've mentioned, and obviously I'd be rooting for you, and I think you'd win both those fights as well. Before I let you go, obviously, it's been a real pleasure getting on the show. I've been looking forward to speaking to you. I think I contacted you originally right near the start of the season, so I've been looking forward to this for quite a long time. Before I let you go, I want to just give you a chance to do any shout-outs, friends, family, sponsors, and also let people know about your Facebook and your Twitter.
Yeah, well, I've got a new management just recently signed, so I'm working with De Novo Athlete, which they're over in the States. They're just getting into sports management with the UFC. They did a lot for me in my last camp, so thanks a lot to De Novo. But, you know, I've got lots of sponsors. They know who they are. It's not about that. The biggest shout-outs I've got at the moment is for my last fight in the UFC. Obviously, my guys over at Tsunami Gym, we've got such a tight-knit group of people over there, and we're all doing, you know, if you look at our team, we're all successful at the moment. We're all doing really well, and it's because of what we want to achieve. And I've travelled the whole world now, and I've been to Thailand, I've been to America, I've trained everywhere, and I honestly don't believe anyone trains like we do at Tsunami, and I think we've got a special bond there, and we are world class, and I think we're starting to prove that now. So, you know, that's the biggest shout I've got is Tsunami. Obviously, thanks to One MMA over and Chael Sonnen over training with those guys, and Scott McCrory, and all the guys I trained with, Clayton, who was a boxing coach out there. You know, they all helped me a lot as well. But I said it on the interview on Seal TV when I got interviewed after my fight. You know, I won that fight. I didn't win that fight on the UFC because of training with Chael Sonnen for 3 months. I won that for training with Tsunami for 3-4 years. You know, every move I used, everything I did, I learned at Tsunami. So look out for Tsunami Gym and really get behind him. We've got Jack Mason fighting next this weekend in Dubai. I'm actually flying out to Dubai tomorrow to sort that out. So he's fighting at the weekend on Cage Warriors. And then after that, we've got John Maguire fighting at UFC 161 in Canada. I'm flying out there ATT. And I'm actually doing a Twitter competition at the moment. Once I hit 10,000 followers, I think I'm like 9.5 or 9.3 or something. Once I hit 10,000 followers, I'm giving away a signed pair of Chael Sonnen gloves, along with a signed pair of my gloves, so both of us. So you can win those. Once I hit 10,000 followers, I'm going to give away what you need to do to get those gloves. So, give me a follow. Thanks very much for having me on the show, and I love to talk, so I'm always come back. Any questions, just tweet me.
Lovely. It's been a real pleasure, Luke. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. Bye.